personal experience with Rivera. Back when I was working at retail in here in my hometown and in the smaller shop, so we had like the big shop that was like in the center, that was huge, and they had all the brands. And sometimes we wouldn't be able to get those brands because there was like sort of a like regional protection for certain sellers that they would be exclusive for that region. And so that bigger shop just invested money into getting a couple of like high-end brands, but they didn't invest money to get Rivera. So Rivera was offered to us, and we're like, cool, yeah, let's start selling Riveras. And the distributor was happy and was like, great, I want someone who's capable of like selling these amps in that region. So we get Rivera Amps. I had no expectations. I had no experiences with them. And then the stuff comes in, and same like you, first I'm like totally thrown off. We get this head. It was the knucklehead reverb, the 100 watt knucklehead reverb, and with several cabinets. And I'm just like, oh, this is so many options. I was like, what I'm going to do. But eventually I got there and I was like, okay, there is something distinctive about it because you can make this amp work for you in any way possible. You can back then lower tuning started to be like more popular. People tuning down the drop B or drop A or something. Yeah. And you could shape the Rivera in a way where you wouldn't need some sort of a tightener in front of it. It would sound tight anyways, because you could take some of that low end out on the amp's channel. And then what they also sent us was a cabinet, which was called the Lost Low Bottom. I don't know if you have heard of that.
Nope.
Because it was, I think it was very short-lived. But here's the thing. It was a 3x12 in a 4x12 chassis. The upper 2x12s were, I'm not sure, they might have been vintage 30. I'm not sure what exactly. But the lower 1x12 was an active 300 watts JBL. So they had a power amp in there with a frequency divider, and you could essentially you connect your amp regularly, and then you could divert some of the lower frequencies to just be handled by that 1x12, which was a long hop JBL speaker and a 300 watt active power amp in there. And then you could add that to the signal, which at first we were like, why would you do that? Where's the point in doing that? And then we tried it out, and we were like, holy shit. There's this like, because you take away some of the workload from the upper two speakers. Now they have more capacity to handle all the low mids and the mids and the high mids and what else is left of what high end for guitar speakers come out. And then all the lower stuff would be, but obviously if you crank up the power amp on that thing, it would shatter the room. It would absolutely shatter the room. And I was like, because I was playing in the band back then that was tuned to tuned to drop A.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this thing on a ride. I'm gonna take this thing on a concert. So I borrowed it from the store, and we went on the show. And my bandmates, they were already looking at me weird because this thing weighs so much because of the active power amp. And it's a regular. It looks like a regular 4x12, and everybody was assuming they get a 4x12. And then we play at the show, and it was one of those shows where not that much of the guitar signal ended up on the PA system because it was a small club and they didn't have the best PA system, so it was all reserved for some parts of the drums and vocals, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I'm firing this thing up, and I played a diesel VH4 back then. So I'm firing this thing up, and my bass player looks at me and is like, "Are you for real?" seems like I can go home. You know what? So this thing,
just get rid of your bass player.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find images of that. It is absolutely mind blowing.
While you're looking for that, I think
found it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
So that's the two upper. I think they were vintage 30, and then there's this 1x12, and here is an image of the back. I think there you go. So here is the power amp, the 300 watt power amp. And let me see if I can find a close up.
So
yeah, there you go.
The power amp, for anyone that can't see, the power amp is taking, like, if you look at a 4x12, where one on, let's say the left corner where a speaker should be, that's where the power amp resides, at the bottom there. So there's essentially three speakers.
Yeah.
In the cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was called Rivera Lost Low Bottom. Maybe I can find a. Oh, there's also you could also get that as a single sub to add to your existing 4x12. So that was that. That looks like a 2x12, like a regular 2x12.
Yeah.
But then on the back it looks like that.
So was there like a crossover between
exactly,
the amp?
Exactly.
Okay.
You could define the crossover frequency with controls on the back. And then, all of that would then be diverted to the subwoofer, and everything else would end up in your regular speakers. And that thing, I remember that there was a huge dispute about the sound, because Steve Lukather there was actually playing some of those. So he had two 4x12s, and he had the subwoofers below, those subwoofers below the 4x12s. And they were playing a couple of shows in Germany, and the guitar sound was like so shattering, and if like coming from the stage, that it would actually divide people to go left and right because they couldn't stand it. People were like,
"That's insane, dude."
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So he was actually, you could say that Steve Lukather was the modern day, who was the guy who split the Red Sea? Not sure.
Oh, Moses.
It was Moses, right? Yeah.
He was the Sonic Moses.
He was the Sonic Moses. He was, and people were like, "This is terrible. I need to move to the side." So, and then
you could use something like that when you have a show and someone's injured and the audience isn't listening. You just roll this fucking thing out. You put it in the middle where you want them to part, and you just start playing, and everyone parts. The ambulance guy comes in to picks up the person and gets out, and then you roll the amp away.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a new use for this amp. There it is.
Yeah, exactly. You could, I mean, and it's insane, right? Here's something.
Yep.
Here is something about the panel. Let me see if I can. Okay, so that's what the panel looks like. So, oh yeah, exactly. Now I remember. This thing would actually go into your effects loop.
What?
Yeah. So you would go into your effects loop.
Okay.
And then you had level adjust, you could change the phase if you had phasing issues.
Yeah.
Then the cabinet itself also had an effects loop because yours was just busy with the subwoofer. And that's what it looked by. And then you had obviously it gave you some indication on if it was peaking or something.
Does that imply that, let's say you could run, I'm just like trying to understand the design here. Does that imply that you could have your amp head that has an effects loop, but not use the effects directly into your amp, and rather use them like, let's say you have something like a Wurlitzer type of like effect, or, you know, like rotating speaker kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you want to get that bottom end without sacrificing your integral signal.
Yeah.
Does that mean you could plug into there so you would have like a wet dry rig essentially?
No. It was this thing.
No?
So
Okay.
since you needed to use the effects loop of your amp to be able to use the subwoofer, they just
okay.
gave you the effects loop that you were then missing. You know?
Oh, okay, I see.
But it was
I get you.
just a serial effects loop. So if you had a parallel effects loop, then that would be gone. So if you absolutely needed a parallel effects loop, then using that sub would not be a good option for you, obviously.
Okay.
I'm interested for how much these things go for these days. Let me find that. For $500. Okay,
Dude. No,
that's okay.
Frank, why do you do me like this, man? Now I want one. Like, I'm gonna have no use for one
No.
because I don't play in bands anymore. But just the mere fact of being able to shake the house and perhaps break the foundation, I'd like to try it.
Why not? Why not? Oh yeah,
Why the hell not?
that was one of the. Let me see if I can get that bigger. Oh no, it's a forum. Oh shit. Does it open? Yes, it does. Yeah, so that's essentially what we had back in the store. You know, we had that knucklehead,
Oh, okay.
55 or the 100 version, and then this 3x12 lost low bottom. And yeah.
It's